Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rapid City Legal and Finance Committee meeting for October 14th, 2015. I'd like to start the meeting with a roll call and determination of quorum, please, Maggie. Thank you. Now's the time to adopt the agenda. If there's any committee member seated who would like to add, modify, or delete anything from the agenda, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Lewis to adopt the agenda, second by Nordstrom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Now is the time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the audience to address the seated committee members on any item that is currently not on the agenda. I currently have no speaker request forms. Am I missing anyone in the audience that would like to talk about anything that's currently not on the agenda today? Seeing none, we're going to move on to public comment for consent items. Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
Yes, sir. Was your item on?
Thank you. Oh. All right, so we're going to move on to public comment for consent items, items 1 through 11. Are there any speaker request forms for agenda items on the consent calendar, which is items 1 through 11? I currently have no speaker request forms. Is there anyone in the audience for consent items 1 through 11? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. The seated committee members will now consider consent items 1 through 11. Are there any committee members that would like to pull a specific item off the consent calendar? Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Item 6 and number 11, please.
Any other committee members? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar except item number 6 and item number 11.
So second.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom to approve consent items 1 through 11 except items number 6 and number 11. Second by Laurenti. Any further discussion on any of the other items being approved? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Items 1 through 10 except item number 6 have been approved. Item number 6 is the resolution declaring certain real property generally located along Chapel Lane surplus for purposes of disposing of such property. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but my question on this is, just after reading it, I guess I'm trying to find out why we acquired the property in the first place. Was it for easements or that type of thing? Do we know the purpose of the fact that we own those? If whoever wants to chime in, that would be great.
Alderman Laurenti?
If I can, Chair, that would be great.
That's fine. I believe the person that I know of who has the most information currently is our finance officer, Pauline Sumption. Pauline, would you like to at least try to provide some information on this item?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, we tried to dig that up, and all we could find is that they were leftover lots when it was replatted. We can't find where there's any easement on there. There's no utilities on those properties. Honestly, it came to light when a property owner was trying to sell their property and found out that what they had been using as their yard for setback purposes was not actually their property. So until we can surplus this and get it taken care of, they'll have issues with their setback on their current structures.
One more follow-up question, if I can, Pauline, on this particular issue. Because we're surplusing the property, and we're talking land here, do we, when we're surplusing it, and it said something about sealed bids, is that right? Do we typically do that by a sealed bid?
We could do sealed bids or we could do auctions. Once we get a value on it, we'll want to have some kind of a value. If there's other rules, if the value is under $500, really they're not buildable lots, so the only people in my mind that are going to be interested are those adjacent property owners at this time.
Okay, so that was my only other concern, was that we got some real market value. Granted, we're talking small amounts, but still, even if it is $500 to $800 to $1,000, it's $500 to $800 to $1,000. So I'm hoping that what happens in the process ultimately if it's not sold? Say the owners of the adjacent properties are not interested, we maintain ownership?
I will tell you, we would maintain ownership, and in addition, if you look closely at the aerial view of the map that is attached, one of the property owners actually has our property fenced in with his, and the council would have to probably make him move that fence line then, if they are not interested in purchasing the property and making it part of their own.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I currently do not have a motion. I'd entertain a motion to either approve, deny, or continue in committee. Move to approve. Second. Got a motion by Laurenti to approve item number 6, a second by Drew. No further discussion. Pauline, if I may take a privilege here, just to clarify, once this is declared by City Council as surplus, appraisals will be conducted on these pieces of property, or how will the value be determined?
There's a variety of ways that we can do that. We could get an official appraisal. We could have a realtor do a market analysis, or we could look at the other property around there and extrapolate a value based on those. Also, we could get the freeholders together if we chose to.
All right, thank you. I just offered that up, Alderman Laurenti, as further clarification. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 11 is a resolution to amend the City of Rapid City compensation plan by establishing the new position of Information Technology, or an IT project manager, within the Community Resources. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair, and if I can, I'd like to ask Mr. Barbier a question, please.
Absolutely.
Mr. Barbier, on this, just real quickly, because I didn't see it on the attached item, was this a budgeted particular item?
It was actually an FTE that was approved for the 2015 budget. When we originally asked for the extra FTE, we were thinking we were going to hire another IT tech, and since then we've kind of rethought that. We think this project manager position to help push projects along and help allocate resources, because we end up with so many projects and so many different priorities. So we're using that open FTE for this position rather than an additional tech.
Is the grade the same as what was approved for the 2015 budget?
It's not. This is slightly higher. However, we think that it won't be. We'll be able to cover it within our budget easily, because we have so much turnover in IT that we have. We budget for full employment for the year, and we don't ever have that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom to approve, a second by Lewis. There's no further discussion. If I may take a privilege here, Mr. Barbier, also as a clarification, continuing on Alderman Laurenti's questions, for the 2016 budget, you've already got the funds available to supplement this position as well, correct? I mean,
Right.
the 2015, you've explained that there's been some vacancies, but in 2016, you're not looking for a supplemental appropriation by creating this position.
Nope, I think we'll be fine.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further discussion lights, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now on to public comment for the non-consent items on today's calendar. Non-consent items are items 12 through 19. This is a time to hear from the audience on any items that are currently on the non-consent calendar. I currently have no speaker request forms. We do have a couple items from the public, and when we address those items, we will ask the person bringing it forward to come forward if they've got anything they'd like to offer on the item. Still seeing no further speaker request forms. Public comment is now closed. We are now on to non-consent items. Item number 12 is a request from Fat Boys, Inc. for a temporary shooting gallery on December 11th and 12th in 2015 in the basement of the Firehouse Wine Cellars located at 622 Main Street. And the chair would like to recognize Mr. Bob Fuchs.
Hi, Bob Fuchs with the Firehouse Wine Cellars. And this year at Christmas, we're going to be doing a Christmas party with the Firehouse Winery. And it's going to feature this year A Christmas Story as our theme. And because of that, we're going to have a Ralphie look-alike contest, and we're going to be auctioning off an Italian leg lamp. And lastly, we want to do a Red Ryder BB gun shooting gallery. And because of that, apparently we have to get a permit. So we're going to have a BB gun range in our basement for 2 nights. And that's what we're asking for a permit to do.
Thank you. If you would like to stand by for possible questions from the seated committee members. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. In the spirit of Christmas, Mr. Fuchs, which I hate to talk about Christmas already. We haven't had Halloween yet, but I see there are Christmas trees in the store, so I feel obliged. Are you aware that there's a possibility somebody could shoot their eye out? Anyway, just to go along with the movie. You don't have to answer that question, but I do have a question for the police department on this particular issue, if I may, Chair.
Absolutely.
Chief, can you, I'm just wondering why this is even on the agenda for us. I figured this would just be something that would come to your office, or am I wrong here?
I believe it would come to the city attorney's office for the request, but I can tell you I reviewed what's linked to the agenda and I don't have any objections.
All right, very good. I hope we get a motion to move on with this. So, otherwise, I just wondered why it came to us. I thought it would be approved at staff level and we wouldn't see something like this, but I yield.
Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Lewis to approve, second by Nordstrom. Any other speaker lights? Alderman Lewis, you still have the floor.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, I have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This item will go to the Monday night council meeting with a recommendation from this committee for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 12 or 13 is from Kenny Hargens, request to waive cleanup assessment fees for property located at 1202 5th Street. And is it Mr. Hargens? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, it is Hargens.
Thank you, sir. You have the committee's ears.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to draw your attention to your folders there, and there's a copy of my letter to the mayor and some other interested individuals in there. I'd like to say that years ago, I used to kind of snicker at old guys that complained about taxes and things like that. Well, here I am. I'm one of those people now, So I don't have any complaint about this money that's being assessed me, but I do have a complaint about the fairness of it. Maybe I have a complaint about the amount too. I don't know. Many years ago, I received a notice from the ordinance police that I should cut my tree limbs. Well, I cut my tree limbs, okay? And this year I received another notice, and I discarded it, and I went out and cut my tree limbs. I hauled a whole pickup load of them to my place out in the hills there. And then I come home and I get a letter saying that I'm assessed this money here for $162. And from what I can determine, what had been cut off of that tree could have fit in a wheelbarrow, But anyway, if you'll read your letter there or whatever, you'll see that I feel that I'm a victim of unfairness here. So I've owned that house on 5th Street ever since I came back from Vietnam in 1972. And throughout the years, I've paid all my taxes, normally, well in advance of the due date and things of that sort. But at the same time, I've been subjected to things like stolen property, lack of law enforcement for ordinances in the area. My garbage can's been missing for 2 weeks, Right now, I'm subjected to the construction on that road there. Clark Street's got to be the shortest block in town. And they started construction on there probably about the middle of about the 1st of July, I guess, and it's still not finished. The other day, I was looking out my window, and some of the workmen were using my backyard for a latrine. I called FMG. They promised to take care of it. And for 3 days, there hadn't been anybody there. I called FMG this morning, complaining about the lack of concrete being poured. And surprisingly, there was 13 people there within a half an hour. I don't know if my phone call had anything to do with it. But anyway, living at my place there on 5th Street, my access is on Clark Street. One of my pickups has been trapped in my backyard for 3 weeks now. A mound of rubble is there, and the concrete forms and things like that. So anyway, here I am going on and on about the unfairness of this, but I would like to see that these fees be waived. It's ridiculous And it's not so much the property owner that suffers, it's people like, when you do get older, you budget your money, Well, it's people like the disabled American veterans and St. Jude's Children's Hospital that's going to suffer because this month I'm not going to be able to make my monthly donation to those outfits. I don't know if this individual, the ordinance police person, is here, to discuss this. I'd be glad to discuss it with him, but as it says here, it's purpose of this is a request to waive the cleanup fees, which is $162, I appreciate the opportunity to vent my criticism of this. It's an interesting concept. I may have to appear down here regularly. But anyway, I don't know if you're going to make a decision on this now, but I don't think I should pay for this. If the city can afford to pay $700,000 for a study for the Civic Center, well, they can certainly pay $162 for having somebody haul a wheelbarrow full of tree limbs away. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hargan. If you will stay standing for
Sure.
potential questions from the city committee members, and since you've indicated that this is your first time down before the city council or the city subcommittee, which is legal and finance committee, just to let you know, this body will make a recommendation. If it does send it on with a recommendation of denial or approval, it will go to Monday night's council meeting. And the Monday night council meeting starts at 6:30 on Monday night. This committee can also make the determination to continue it in committee for more information, which means that it would come back to this committee. So those are the options that this committee will be considering today.
I see.
But if you'll stand for questions, potential questions. Thank you. Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to ask Jeff Barbier a couple questions, if I could, please.
Absolutely. Mr. Barbier?
Mr. Barbier, do you have anything, do you know anything about this situation?
I do. Also, Clayton McLean and Barbara Garcia are here if you want more details, but the tree, the before and after pictures are attached, and it's one of those pictures, tell 1,000 words. The ordinance is that the tree limbs have to be at least 11 feet above the street, 7 feet above the sidewalk. The limbs from the pictures, you can see that we're still overhanging the street. Our contractor came in and cut the branches back. The $120 part of the bill would be what the city is out, what we've paid to our contractor to do the work. The $42 is an admin fee that code enforcement adds on top for our work.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Barbier, isn't there an appeal process available to the constituents that have a code enforcement issue?
Well, there is, but not exactly for this situation. The situation is for when you receive, there's a Code Enforcement Board of Appeals, and when you receive your notice of the situation, whether it's trees or grass or debris or whatever, then the person is required to notify either Barb Garcia or I in writing, and we'll set up that meeting for the Code Enforcement Board of Appeals to hear their appeal, but that's before the work is done, not after the fact.
Thank you. And then a second question has to do with the correspondence going back and forth. Mr. Hargens here has put forth a good case, but I was wondering if the staff has got any comments about their side of the correspondence.
Well, like I say, I don't know if Clayton wants to give specifics, but basically when we re-inspected, the tree was still overhanging the street, and I don't believe that Mr. McLean was aware that any branches had been cut back by the property owner at that point.
Thank you. May I ask Clayton a question?
Yes, Mr. Harkins can choose to answer your question or
No,
not. But
Clayton McLean.
Clayton, sorry about that.
Yep.
Clayton, are you available to answer some questions from Alderman Nordstrom? And Clayton, if you'd please
Hi.
state your name for the record and your affiliation to the city, please.
My name's Clayton McLean. I'm the code enforcement officer for the South Side.
Clayton, I really appreciate your work and everything else that you've done for the city and as far as code enforcement. And I find this to be a little bit particularly odd as to what's taking place. So can you explain some of the correspondence you've had with, or conversations you had with Mr. Hargens?
Sure. I I didn't hear anything from him until after he received the bill. And then he called me because he was upset about the bill. And he said that he had cut the tree branches down. And I said when I went to re-inspect, I didn't notice any tree branches were cut down. And I said, well, did you get the notice that I sent you? And he said, no, I didn't get the notice. And I said, well, why did you cut the tree branches down if you didn't receive my notice? And he said, oh, yeah, I received the notice. And I said, okay, well, it states on there what the city code is. The tree branches have to be 11 feet above the road. And he said, well, I didn't read that part on the card. I said, well, it was attached on the notice. And I said, I have before and after pictures if you'd like to see them. And he said, no, I don't want to see them. And I said, okay. I said, well, I don't understand why you're so upset. And he said, well, I'm upset because I feel I should have received a second notice that my work wasn't up to code. And I said, well, that's not our practice to send 2 notices to people. We send 1 notice, and then most people correct the issue after that 1 notice. If it's not corrected after the due date, we send our contractor out there to complete the work. And then he hung up on me.
Do you have those documents? I don't need them right now, but do you have those documents available?
I do, and they're also attached to the...
They're on the links?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'll yield.
Motion to deny.
Second.
I've got a motion by Alderman Laurenti to deny item number 13, a second by Nordstrom. We still have discussions and questions. Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
I guess that kind of takes the wind out of my sails. I was just going to say, it sounds like Mr. Hargis tried to comply, but didn't quite read the notice quite as much, and I knew we don't send a second notice, so I guess I'll just leave it at that. But I was going to say maybe we should try to do something, just because it sounds like he wasn't like avoiding it. It just didn't quite. I mean, you get those notices, you don't read them all the way through. Sometimes I understand we don't give a second notice, and I understand why we do that. So I appreciate the code enforcement officers, trying to do his best as well. If he totally ignored you and hadn't done anything, I'd say, yeah, 100%, then we should deny this. But I feel like maybe he tried to do something and didn't quite read the ordinance correctly. Or, I mean, I just don't believe in, I believe in rewarding attempts at least. I mean, not everybody here is a code enforcement officer, and we're trying to do our best to, as long as he's trying to comply, I guess is my point. That's what I appreciate about it. So I'll probably vote against that denial.
Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make an amendment to the motion to waive the administration fees. We'll do that's my motion.
I've got an amendment on the floor for the motion to deny the request, but to waive the $42 administration fee. Do I have a second? Second. I've got a second on the amendment. We currently are considering the amendment to the motion. Any further discussion? We will be voting on the amendment to the motion, which is to waive the $42 administration fee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The amendment has been approved, so the motion on the floor now is to deny item number 13 and yet to waive the $42 administration fee. Any further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor of the denial, waiving the $42 administration fee?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Hargens, this body is recommending to the City Council Monday night that we are going to deny your request to waive the $162. However, the amendment will waive the administration fee so that only the fee charged to the city by the contractor would be the portion you'd have to pay. That's the recommendation going to Monday night. The full council Monday night will consider it. We welcome you to come back and talk to the full 10 members on the council meeting Monday night if you can make it into your schedule.
I understand. Is there any way that money can just be subtracted from the exorbitant property taxes I pay every year?
No, sir, it cannot. They're 2 different collection fees.
I see. Okay, I'll make every attempt to be here. Monday night, you say?
Monday night, and the city council starts at 6:30.
Okay. Then will I receive some kind of written notice that that part of my
If the city
fee has
council,
been-
if the city council decides to take the recommendation from this body, then yes, you will receive notification.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to item number 14, Item number 14 is the update on the President's Plaza project and authorization to staff to work with the President's Plaza Group to separate the public and private portions of the President's Plaza project. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti. I've got a motion by Laurenti to acknowledge. So, Alderman Laurenti, just for clarification, you're only acknowledging the President's Plaza project update. You're not authorizing staff to work with the President's Plaza Group to separate the public and private portions of the project.
Yeah, current motion is just to acknowledge the update. If
Okay, and do I have a second?
there was a second already.
After the clarification, I'm looking for a second.
Okay.
I do have a second, but from Alderwoman Drew. So we do have a motion on the floor to acknowledge only the update on the President's Plaza project, and I have a second by Alderwoman Drew. And Alderman Laurenti, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And obviously, we have a long way to go on this, so that's why I'm just acknowledging at this point, and mainly acknowledging at this point because I think there are some questions that still need to be answered, and I just wanted to voice those at this point, which is that I think what the council and obviously myself, we need to look at some of what's written in here is that I'm hoping that it gets developed, this particular property, but I'm wondering why we would just be working with the President's Plaza group when in fact nothing has been done with the development with this particular lot. My question is, are there other developers who are interested in this lot? I mean, we're talking about free market here. So the other side of it is the land itself. In this particular, was written in this particular document, if any of the others have been through it as well, you would have noticed that it says something about donating the land to a foundation. The last I remember when we first started working with President's Plaza was that the market value of this piece of land was over $800,000. So why we would be donating it to a foundation to then move forward, and it sounds like maybe I can get an answer on that, but I'm very concerned about that because obviously we're talking about a private development here. I'm hoping that that land, which is owned by the city, will be sold at market value. And if I can, Chair, I would like to ask Finance a question on that particular issue. Thank you.
Ms. Sumption?
Pauline, if you can answer that, please, on the land portion, and if my description of what I'm reading on the attachment is correct.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Joel can elaborate more on what has to be done, but what would happen is much like Cabela's, where we gave the land to the foundation and then they in turn sold it, or with Cabela's they gifted it, but they're getting reimbursed through the TID, a portion of that money, and then the city gets the rest of the money for the value of that land that was given to Cabela's. In this case, the land would be given to the foundation, the Economic Development Foundation, to sell to the developer. They would retain a commission of some sort, and the rest would be returned to the city. So it would actually be sold. It would not be donated to the developer.
So my question is that standard? Why would we give it to a foundation? Why would we not sell it ourselves, saving the commission, which would help the general fund?
Mr. Laurenti, I believe our City Attorney Joel Ledeen might be a better
Very good.
resource
Thank
to
you.
answer that question.
Thank you, Chair.
Honestly, that's one of the details that needs to be worked out, is how the land is going to be transferred. The reason, in simplest answer to your question, is legally we can't just directly transfer property to a private buyer. So there's a couple ways for us to do it. We can trade property, which the way this was initially set up, we were essentially trading the land on which President's Plaza building was going to sit for a future condomized interest in the parking ramp. But now that we are looking at separating the project, we will have to figure out a different mechanism by which to transfer that property. What the finance officer told you was one of the ways we have discussed about doing that, which is we can legally transfer land to an economic development corporation, then they could sell it. In this case, the economic development corporation would just essentially serve as a strawman to facilitate transfer. The property would be reappraised, and we would expect to, and everyone understands that we are going to want market value for that.
Alderman Laurenti, you have about 30 seconds.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lundin, if you can we then sell the property to having a real estate agency sell the property for us?
Sure, certainly you could list the property and sell it as well.
Okay, very good, thank you. So these are the questions I have. I mean, I think we need to take our time and get this right. Obviously, this is something that's been on our calendar for many years, this particular piece of land. And I would just want to make sure that as we move forward, that we put this in a way that best creates an opportunity for the development to actually happen this time. And I honestly believe us already zeroing in on one developer narrows our ability then to develop this particular property. There may be better ideas for this particular property, but we're zeroing in on one developer at this point, which I don't understand. So I'm just hoping that that will get hammered out as we move through the process. Thank you, Chair.
Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to acknowledge the update and authorize staff to work with President's Plaza Group to separate the public and private portions of the project.
I currently have a substitute motion on the floor to approve, to acknowledge the update on the President's Plaza project and to authorize staff to work with the President's Plaza Group to separate the public and private portions of the project. Motion was made by Lewis, second by Nordstrom. Alderman Lewis, you still have the floor.
So I get the 30 seconds back it took you to restate that?
No.
Anyway, so I guess I just want to voice my support for this process because I think it makes it a little cleaner for the public to understand there's no money going, public money is going to the public project, the private money is going to the private project. There's no mixing of funds. There's no, it's very clean cut. There's no, nothing's muddled anymore. We can see that we're going to build a parking lot, they're going to build their property, and that's how it's going to go. And there's no money exchanging hands back and forth, and we're getting fair market value for the property. The reason we're working with this group is because they're the group we have a contract with, and they're the most likely to jump on it right away. The fact of the matter is the city's going to have to do some redesign work to get some things done, and we have some steps we need to go through, so we need to make sure we have our ducks in a row from our side. Indications I've had, is that we're going to be taking some time to do that, but I think this will ultimately get it done, and I think it just helps serve to keep the message out there that Rapid City is willing to work with you. If you're willing to spend money here, we need to keep the doors open and do everything we can to make that happen for you. And so that's why I'm going to keep in support of this project. I've been in support of it since the beginning, and I will stay with it. And I appreciate everybody's willingness to work together and come to the table and come to this idea. This idea was out there before. It's not something new that we came up with, but we're going to do with it now, and I think that's the best way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Since there's an amended motion on the floor, Alderman Laurenti, you have an additional, or a substitute motion, thank you, on the floor. Alderman Laurenti, you have an additional 5 minutes since we're talking about the amendment, or the substitute motion. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can, I'd like to ask the Attorney's Office a question, if I may, please.
Mr. Ledeen?
Mr. Lundin, on this, what contractual obligations do we have on this particular property at this point with President's Plaza?
As far as giving you a comprehensive list of, I'm not really prepared to do that now. I have previously prepared a memo that I provided to the alderman. I don't think it's really changed, and I could, if you're interested, forward that to the council again after the meeting.
So maybe a more pointed question to what I said earlier was putting the piece of land on the market for any potential developer to purchase for any potential future development. Is there something contractually in place with President's Plaza that keeps us from doing that today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One more question, if I can, please, Chair.
Alderman Laurenti, you still have the floor.
Mr. Lundin, how long is that contractual obligation right now that would keep us from doing that specifically, putting that piece of property on the market to any potential developer?
There are benchmarks at the end of this year and again through next year that would need to be met. And I think I'll address that when I forward the email of the contractual obligations.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Seeing no further request or for speaking from the seated committee members here, we do have a substitute motion on the floor to acknowledge the update on the President's Plaza project and to authorize staff to work with President's Plaza Group to separate the public and private portions of the project. This, just for clarification before we take the vote, this would simply allow staff to start working with that group to bring back the recommendation of what separating the public portion, which is the parking lot, from the private portion, which is the developer's responsibility for the President's Plaza project. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries 4-1. Alderman Laurenti voting no. Item number 15 is to authorize the transfer of remaining 2015 council contingency funds in the amount of $65,000 to the Civic Center for the ADA repairs and administration costs. I've got a motion by Laurenti to approve, a second by Alderman Lewis. Any speaker lights? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 16 is the update on the recent 2015 Department of Justice COPS hiring grant and a request for alternative staffing increase. Chair would like to recognize Chief Jegras.
Thank you, Chair. I've submitted a memo that outlines the circumstances that we're in, and that is that we are aware that we were not awarded the COPS grant that we relied upon through the budgeting process to add additional officers to our staff. In the memo, it outlines the funding that was included in our 2016 budget and an alternative proposal at this point to add one additional police officer and one community service officer that would fall within that budgeted amount. In addition, we attached a memo from Captain Hedrick that compares our staffing increases over the last few years to the Pennington County Sheriff's Office and Sioux Falls Police Department to give clear justification to this request.
Thank you, Chief. If you'll stand by for potential questions. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can, I'd like to ask the Finance Officer a question on this, please.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Chair. Pauline, can you I just want to make sure, because the budgeted amount was what, about 318,000, and it appears that there's a difference of about 200 and almost 19, 218 something, I think, just rough math, between what was budgeted and now what we'll have to do with 2 officers rather than 6. Does that go back to general fund, or does it still stay in that line item?
I'm going to clarify something. So in the general fund for 2016, we budgeted the additional expenditures, but we also budgeted the additional grant revenue. So the net increase between those two was about $105,000. So what will be remaining then is about, if he's allowed to hire these 2 individuals, estimating it was, I think if I remember my numbers correctly, it was about $98,000. So there'd be about $7,000 left over is all.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the police chief to hire, as per the memo. I'm sorry, I don't have the wording in front of me.
I currently have a motion to acknowledge the update on the recent 2015 Department of Justice COPS hiring grant and to approve the request for alternative staffing increase as presented by Chief Jegras. Alderman Lewis. Alderman Lewis made the motion, second by Laurenti. Yeah. Alderman Lewis, you still have the floor.
That's exactly what I just said. Okay. I just want to make sure that that's gotten the record correctly, so I appreciate that. Nothing else.
Seeing any further discussion from committee members? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6083 to revise the name and update the mission of the Rapid City Fire Department by amending Chapter 2.36 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Move to approve. I've got a motion by Laurenti to approve, second by Nordstrom. Seeing no further discussion lights, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18 is resolution number 2015-107, amending certain fees to be charged in 2016 for various licenses, permits, and applications. Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me make the motion to approve this.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom to approve item number 18, a second by Lewis. Alderman Nordstrom, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware of the fee changes, and I was just going to ask staff, and you can just do an odd nodding of the head or something like that, if we're notifying the public that these changes are going into effect.
That's okay. Mr. Bigler, our Parks and Recreation Director, is heading to the podium. Jeff, if you'd go ahead and state your name and your affiliation to the city, please, for the
Yes.
record.
Jeff Bigler, Parks and Recreation Director. To answer your question, Alderman Nordstrom, I think you just did. You just made the enough. But no, this is we bring this to the council for approval every year about this time for the fee increases for ice and swim and golf and cemetery fees. This is certainly going to then make it into papers and onto the news stations. We usually get calls for stories after this comes to this forum. We've already taken this through we've taken the increase in fees for golf through the Meadowbrook Golf Committee. We've also taken these fee increases to our Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and they have approved them.
Thank you, Jeff, or Mr. Bigler. I appreciate you taking the initiative to notify the public on this, and so we don't give them a shock when they come in and ask for whatever permits or applications they want to apply for. So thank you. Appreciate doing that.
For clarification on this, I believe it was only the Parks and Rec fees that had some alteration and just one item on the police department. And the chair would like to recognize Police Chief Jegaris to comment on the fee increase.
Just to answer Alderman Nordstrom's question, we don't have any intention to do any other information sharing outside of the normal council procedure, which we're engaging in right now.
Thank you. And no other fees on the current resolution were modified or changed at this time. It was only these two departments. So Alderman Nordstrom, you still have the floor?
Yield.
You done? I believe I currently have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passed. Item number 19 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6075 to amend provisions concerning special event alcohol beverage licenses to allow charitable organizations to sell donated alcohol by amending section 5.12.035 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Drew. I do have a motion to approve by Laurenti.
Second.
I've got a second by Drew. Alderwoman Drew, you have the floor.
Okay, I guess I have some questions for Joel Landine on this. You know, this has been something that nonprofits have dealt with for quite a while. Oh, excuse me, is it Carla that I need to talk to? Okay.
Carla, if you would please identify yourself for the record.
Carla Cushman, Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you. Alderwoman Drew, you still have the floor.
Okay, so being from nonprofit background, I can support this fully, but I need to understand, will there be a different permit for a license that has donated beer and alcohol?
Well, there's different classifications of special event permits. One permit, special event permit, but different classifications. So this creates two new categories and a new subcategory of special event permits for off-sale situations when the alcohol is donated and when it is sold by a nonprofit or charitable organization.
Well, I can see some confusion coming forth from the nonprofits about this, thinking they don't have to get, permission or a permit because the alcohol is being donated. So I'm just saying, I'm just bringing this up so that the nonprofits really understand that they still have to get a permit, they still have to go through the legal wrangling to have this kind of event, whether it's donated or whether it's purchased wholesale.
That's exactly correct. If they're selling alcohol, they need to ask for permission.
And actually, a lot of them don't know that when it's donated. So, just to make that very clear. Thank you. I yield.
I currently have no further speaker requests. We do have a motion on the floor to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 20 is the second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6066 to amend provisions for city payment of debt acquired by rural fire protection districts prior to annexation by amending Chapter 3.20 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Got a motion by Lewis to approve, second by Laurenti. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion by Laurenti to adjourn, second by Lewis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.